3:12 a.m. in Abidjan. A city known for its vibrant nightlife was eerily silent. Then, headlights cut through the darkness. Military trucks moved like phantoms. Cell towers went dark. The national broadcaster was seized in under 20 minutes. By sunrise, the Ivorian flag no longer waved for the man who once promised a golden era. The coup wasn't just swift, it was surgical. And by dawn, a new chapter had already begun. President Alassane Ouattara, once praised by the West as a democratic stabilizer, vanished. No final address, no last stand, just gone. But this wasn't your typical West African coup. It wasn't about inflation or unpaid soldiers. It was personal, political, explosive. Inside sources from the Transitional Council claim Ouattara had been orchestrating covert efforts to destabilize Burkina Faso, specifically to take down Captain Ibrahim Traore, the same Traore who had become the face of Pan-African defiance, who had survived assassination plots, economic chokeholds, and global isolation. This wasn't just regime change, this was revenge. And now the shadows were starting to move. Whispers turned into evidence. Ouattara, once hailed as a man of peace, was allegedly playing a dangerous double game. Behind the scenes, he wasn't building stability, he was breaking it. And the Ivorian military had seen enough. So what really happened that night? Why did one of West Africa's most stable regimes collapse in hours? And how does this moment connect to the tidal wave of power shifts rocking the entire region? Let's break it down. When Alassane Ouattara took power in 2010, the West applauded. He was their golden boy, a former IMF executive, educated in the US, fluent in the language of markets and stability. To Paris and Washington, he was a safe bet. To investors, he was a dream. To the Ivorian people, the dream slowly curdled into something else. In 2020, he pushed through a third term by exploiting a constitutional loophole. Protests exploded. Dozens of civilians were killed. Opposition figures jailed or banned. Yet the international community stayed silent. No sanctions, no outrage, just quiet approval, because to them, stability meant predictability, even if it came at the cost of democracy. Meanwhile, just across the border, something unexpected happened. In 2022, a 34-year-old captain named Ibrahim Traore overthrew a Western-backed president in Burkina Faso. He expelled French troops, canceled IMF deals, and announced a new era of Pan-African sovereignty. To the West, Traore was dangerous. To a growing number of Africans, he was a symbol of hope. His speeches spread like wildfire through encrypted chats. Young Ivorian officers were listening. Cadets were resigning. Soldiers were crossing into Burkina Faso and coming back changed. The revolution wasn't just televised, it was spreading quietly, decisively into the Ivorian barracks. Then came the intel leak. According to a 2023 whistleblower, Ouattara was working with foreign officials, France, ECOWAS, to isolate and weaken Traore, not diplomatically, but through destabilization. The goal? Make Burkina Faso look like a failed experiment before others followed its lead. But it backfired. Instead of weakening the revolution, it awakened one inside Ivory Coast, in the cities of Bouaké, Korhogo, Yamoussoukro. The question shifted from, can we follow Traore's path, to when do we start? The operation that would topple Ouattara wasn't born in the halls of power. It was forged in mess halls, late-night barracks, and encrypted chats. It was called Operation Renaissance, and it had one goal: restore legitimacy, without chaos. The timeline was tight, the mission silent and surgical. Every detail measured through one lens. Will this protect the people? By early 2024, the signs were impossible to ignore. Ouattara, once everywhere, was suddenly nowhere. Weeks passed without a public appearance. Then, an unannounced French diplomatic team landed in Abidjan. No press, no cameras. Cabinet members were reshuffled behind closed doors. The man who had once dominated every screen, every summit, had seemingly disappeared. To the conspirators, this wasn't paranoia, it was confirmation. The regime was weakening, and the moment had come. At 3:12 a.m., the operation launched, not with explosions, not with sirens, but with silence and precision. State media was seized without a single gunshot. A young lieutenant stood before the camera and declared, "This is not a coup. This is a restoration." Within 30 minutes, the Presidential Guard didn't resist. They joined. Their commander defected, and most of his men followed. The gates of the palace didn't fall in flames. They opened. Power didn't collapse, it surrendered. And Ouattara? Gone. Evacuated in the dead of night under French protection. No final address, no hero's exit, just silence. Before we dive deeper, are you enjoying this breakdown? If you are, hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more raw, real, and revealing stories from across Africa. This is Africa News and Gist, where the headlines don't just scroll, they speak. Now let's get back to the story. If the world was stunned by Ouattara's fall, what came next left it speechless. Ivory Coast, expected by many to spiral into post-coup chaos, did the unthinkable. It stayed calm. There were no generals declaring indefinite rule, no curfews, no crackdown. Instead, within 48 hours, a civilian military transitional council was announced. And it wasn't just uniforms at the table. It included civil society leaders, respected economists, human rights advocates, diaspora legal experts, and even student delegates from rural unions. Markets reopened. Schools resumed by week's end. The internet stayed on. The press remained free. Even foreign embassies, usually the first to panic, released rare statements applauding the restraint and responsibility of the new leadership. The transition was so smooth, so silent, many Ivorians didn't even realize a coup had happened. This wasn't a grab for power, it was something else entirely. And what came next proved it. Then came the announcement that changed everything. No member of this council shall contest future elections. We are not here for rule, we are here for renewal. It wasn't just a promise, it was a line in the sand, a declaration no West African coup had ever dared to make, let alone keep. Immediately, the gears of transformation started turning. National audits were launched. The French military presence under full review. A new civic charter was drafted, not in secret rooms, but in open public forums. A 6-month roadmap to civilian elections was unveiled. But the biggest shift? The people were brought in, not just as spectators, but as participants. This wasn't just the fall of a president. It was the attempted rebirth of a nation finally reclaiming its voice, and the world was watching. But when the army's broadcast confirmed the peaceful fall of Alassane Ouattara, the world's reaction, swift but hollow. France, Ivory Coast's former colonial master, released a carefully crafted statement urging calm and monitoring developments. In Washington, the U.S. echoed the same tired line. We call for a swift return to constitutional order. But let's be clear, these weren't calls for justice. They were calls for control, thinly veiled attempts to restore the very system Ivorians had just rejected. To many Africans watching, the hypocrisy was undeniable. These were the same powers that stayed silent when Ouattara rewrote the Constitution to cling to power. The same voices that turned away when journalists were jailed, protests crushed, and opposition leaders erased. Now suddenly, they cared about democracy? No. What they cared about was losing a reliable ally. And for millions across the continent, the message was clear. Western support isn't tied to democracy, it's tied to obedience. The same U.S. that now called for dialogue was silent when journalists were jailed, when activists were beaten, when opposition candidates vanished ahead of the 2020 election. Their concern wasn't about democracy, it was about disruption, about losing a loyal proxy in a region they thought they still controlled. But across West Africa, the energy was electric. In Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Conakry, capitals that had already dared to reclaim their sovereignty, the fall of Ouattara wasn't seen as chaos. It was seen as confirmation, a sign that another domino had dropped. And this time, it landed on the right side of history. Public statements praised Ivory Coast for rejoining the family of nations, choosing dignity over dependency. In Dakar, students lit candles. In Korhogo, farmers danced in the streets. It wasn't fear, it was freedom, and the sound of a continent waking up. In Ghana and Senegal, where leaders still walked the tightrope between foreign loyalty and growing domestic frustration, there was no condemnation, just silence. The kind of silence that says everything. Because they too could hear the applause rising from their streets. And they knew the people were watching. Meanwhile, as the world argued over whether to call it a coup or a correction, inside Ivory Coast, the real work had already begun. Because removing Ouattara, that wasn't the finish line. That was just the opening move. What needed to fall wasn't just a man, but a machine. An entire apparatus built over a decade, woven with corruption, crony capitalism, and quiet authoritarianism. Now, for the first time in years, that machine was being dismantled, piece by piece. Ouattara's escape, smuggled out by French security just days before the operation, didn't break the system. It exposed it. Within a week of the takeover, the Transitional Council launched sweeping audits across the nation's top ministries. What they uncovered stunned even the most seasoned insiders. Over 1.22 billion gone, hidden in offshore accounts across Paris, Dubai, and Mauritius, laundered through a web of shell companies tied directly to Ouattara's family and inner circle. This wasn't just corruption, it was looting in broad daylight. And for the first time, the truth was no longer buried. The missing billions weren't just sitting idle. They were tied to ghost infrastructure projects, bloated military contracts, and cocoa profits that vanished before ever reaching the people. But the transitional government wasn't just chasing stolen money, they were chasing sovereignty. A full review of foreign military presence was launched, French bases included, and the message couldn't be clearer. Strategic partnerships must serve Ivorian interests, not foreign agendas. Mining contracts? Frozen, pending renegotiation. And for the first time in history, Ivorians tuned in to a live national debate on the CFA franc, the colonial-era currency still controlled by France. A nation once silenced was now doing more than speaking. It was demanding, and the world had no choice but to listen. Despite uncovering massive corruption, the new leadership didn't launch mass purges. There were no midnight arrests, no political witch hunts. Instead, they formed a National Reconciliation Commission and put it in the hands of retired judges, human rights advocates, and respected economists, not generals. Former ministers who had fled were given a clear choice: return and face justice, or lose your citizenship. Those who stayed, placed under investigation, but not thrown into cells. This wasn't about revenge, it was about rebuilding, not retribution, just reform, and it signaled a new kind of leadership rising in West Africa. So what do you think? Was this coup really about local frustrations? Or was it triggered by Ouattara's alleged involvement in a plot against Captain Ibrahim Traore? And here's the real question. Why did France and the US panic more over Ouattara's fall than over the suffering of ordinary Ivorians? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If the West could call Ouattara a democrat while silencing Ivorian voices, who really defines democracy in Africa? Foreign diplomats or the African streets? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, history is watching. And if you want more videos like this, stories about African leaders who are breaking the mold and pushing the continent forward, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching. And until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and stay with us. And stay